Canada has joined a growing list of countries who say they will recognize Palestine as a state for the first time. Prime Minister Mark Carney says Ottawa will recognize Palestinian statehood by September if the Palestinian Authority meets certain commitments. For more on this, I'm joined by Varsen Aghabekian in Ramallah, the West Bank. She's the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Expatriates for the Palestinian National Authority. Varsen, thank you so much for joining us. I want to begin by asking what you make of this really a trend now, a growing number of countries, including Canada, saying that they may recognize a Palestinian state with conditions.
Good morning to you in Canada. And yes, there's a growing number of states that are telling us that they would be recognizing, whether now or up until September in New York. This is an extremely important historic time for Palestinians because the recognition is not symbolic. It sends the world a very clear message that there is a state of Palestine, and the illusion of Israel as an occupier state, of keeping it as an occupied entity until eternity, does not hold much. It safeguards the two-state solution as the most viable solution for ending the conflict and ending the occupation. Any other solution is not viable, and it also puts all states that claim that they are for international law, they actually are respecting that international law by recognizing, and they are affirming the rights of the Palestinian people for self-determination.
Varsen, you're in the West Bank, you're in Ramallah. I wonder, has news of this conversation around recognition of Palestinian statehood, has it filtered through? What are people in the street saying, and how do they feel about this kind of change in the conversation?
Recognition is an overdue demand by Palestinians, but recognition alone on paper does not move things. Recognition should be in parallel with measures on the ground that will help Palestinians materialize their state and help them to see that justice can prevail and that peace is possible. So both go in line together. Of course, people are elated. The more countries recognize, the more it gives Palestinians hope that one day they will have their free, sovereign, independent state materialize on the ground.
As I mentioned, this recognition comes with conditions, and one of the conditions from Canada is holding elections. So I have to ask you, is the Palestinian Authority prepared to hold elections? And I think there was a timeline of about a year, and just looking at the sheer amount of devastation in Gaza right now, is that even a realistic ask?
Look, elections are a Palestinian demand. We as Palestinians have been denied our right to elect our leaders for some time. And there's a reason for it. When you are under occupation, you are an oppressed people. Logistically, you can't hold your elections under an environment that is conducive to elections. Jerusalemites cannot elect because of Israeli impediments, the ongoing war in Gaza. So we are waiting for a conducive time for elections. We hope that soon there's a ceasefire on the Gaza front and we are enabled to go into Gaza and have the governance in Gaza so as to be able to prepare the grounds for the election. We will have a timeline, but there are certain assumptions that need to be on the ground so that we can hold these elections. For the time being, we will have a timeline. We will say exactly what we will do in terms of elections, but we will also say what impediments there are and what needs to be aired out so that we can conduct these elections freely and have them done properly.
So I hear what you're saying, like part of this conversation is kind of, we're in those still opening preliminary steps. But the other big part of this conversation and another demand from Canada is to demilitarize, is the question of Hamas, which of course is a separate entity. But what can you do? What can be done? What can the Palestinian Authority do about Hamas to ensure that the militancy is controlled, that these terror groups are not targeting Israel?
Today, there's a consensus in the Arab world and in a large part of the Muslim world that Hamas will not be part of the governance in the day after of Gaza, and that Hamas's weapons need to be handed to either the Palestinian Authority or another third party. The main issue is that if we want a Palestinian state, it has to be a unified state with one governance, one law, one system, and one gun. So, and that weapon should be in the hands of the legitimate authority that has the governance on the entirety of the Palestinian land, which is currently occupied, and that would be the Palestinian Authority.
Varsen, you've been part of these conversations and a push for recognition of Palestine for quite some time. I wonder just personally how it feels for you that we've reached this point where we're seeing more countries talking about this as a reality.
As I said, this is long overdue, and this is the right thing to do. If people want peace in the area and they say they are for international law, there's absolutely no justification for not recognizing the state of Palestine. The state of Palestine is enshrined in international law. It's an occupied territory. International law says so. The ICJ ruling, the last ruling last year said this is an occupied territory whereby the occupation needs to be dismantled and to pave the road to a free and sovereign Palestinian state. So the more states come forward and recognize, the more it helps materialize and the more it takes us to the path of peace.
Let's shift our focus to the West Bank. I want to talk about the uptick in settler violence in the occupied West Bank. There's been a major spike in the killings of Palestinians there. How are people around you feeling, and what would the Palestinian Authority like Israel to do to address this situation of these continued incursions from settlers?
We like the Israeli Authority to act as an occupier that has responsibilities toward the occupied people. The settlers' violence needs to be curtailed by the Israeli military. What we see today is that the military backs the settlers in their violent attacks of the Palestinians. And these are attacks, as you said, are spiking. And we see them on a daily basis, and they take several forms and shapes, from burning land, burning houses, cars, throwing stones, attacking people, beating people to death, shootings, you name it. This violence needs to stop.
All right. Thank you very much. It's good to hear from you and your perspective from the West Bank. That is the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Expatriates for the Palestinian National Authority, Varsen Aghabekian, joining us from Ramallah.
Thank you.